Hello and welcome to Lee Live. I know your host, Cody Lee, said on Twitter today that I would not be streaming, that I had other plans, that I was busy. I was, but I managed to get home just in time to think that maybe I would have a little bit of an opportunity to stream and talk about the things I was planning on talking about anyway. So maybe it might be a bit of a shorter show. It might be longer. If we could do anything, it could go all sorts of ways. But the big takeaway here, well, the main reason I wanted to go live is because I wanted to show off my new picture, my new portrait of Metroid Samus Aran. My screen there is a little bit small. Let me see. I can adjust it live, right? Oops. I'm gonna have to figure out how to. Yep. So see, you can kind of make it out there. It's clearly present. It's really lovely. I like it a lot, and I have a Star Fox one on the way, and I have an Edelgard one picked out, a Fire Emblem one picked out. It's of Edelgard, but whatever, and a Pokemon one picked out. So I'm really looking forward to having those on the wall as well to add to my wall of perfect collections. I was gonna order a Donkey Kong Country one, but I can't decide. Do I want the Nintendo Power poster of Donkey Kong Country 1? Or the Nintendo Power poster of Donkey Kong Country 2. Like, I have no idea, man. Like, DKC 1 is so iconic and so classic, but 2 is like a legitimately GOAT game in its own right. I would just like to get both, but honestly, I'm worried that I'm gonna run out of room on my wall. To be completely bluntly honest with you, it is unbelievable just how much this stuff has already started to stack up. Really enjoying everything. I suppose I should zoom in a bit more here so you can read it adequately, so you know I'm not making this up or bullshitting you. So the reason I decided to go live today is Devil May Cry 3 recently on the 20th released for Nintendo Switch. And I actually got a lot of comments requesting that I go back to the game, review it more in depth this time, and talk about the game. And I seriously did think about it. I really did want to prove that my disdain for this franchise and this character and the developers behind it isn't misplaced. Like, I'm not hating on this because it's a PS2 game. I'm hating on it because it's a bad game. Like, I have always maintained that God Hand was better, Ninja Gaiden Black is better, Bayonetta is better. There are just so many action games that are heads and shoulders above any DMC game. It's kind of impossible to really take DMC seriously, considering the stiff competition it has. And this is coming from someone who really loves this genre, these kinds of action games, and Capcom in general. DMC just can't compete. It has this really obsessive cult fan base and not a whole lot else. It's a lot like Evangelion in that respect, where it feels more hype than substance. And I think it's really gotten out of control with DMC5 and like the weird shit people have been like throwing at each other on message boards. Like, man, I wish I had the 4chan thread that brought up so I could show you, but what one of these threads produced, the gist of it is that DMC5 among DMC fanboys is now the best one because it's the newest one. It's blind fanboyish bullshit, and I don't care for it. I don't care for the mindset. I don't care for the games. I don't care for the fans. I don't care for the opinion. And this is coming from someone who's played Devil May Cry 3, who knows it's not very good, and who has made numerous videos saying as such in the past. And I really wanted to go back and really make an in-depth, Final Fantasy VIII style spoony review of DMC3, but I realize that I don't need to because there are people like this based motherfucker right here, Alex Kirkgard, who have been saying what I've been saying for years. Devil May Cry 3 is not that great of a game. It's not like some high mark of the industry. It's not the best hack and slash game ever made. It's probably not even the best Devil May Cry, to be completely honest with you. But it's bizarre just how much DMC3 in particular has been overhyped by gamers and the gaming community and PlayStation fanboys especially. It's this bizarre situation that this guy really goes deep into explaining like pretty much all of my problems with Devil May Cry 3. Browsing through this article, I didn't really see a whole lot that I disagreed with. So let's read this whole thing out loud. I'm not sure how long this is going to take. Probably about like 20 minutes. So bear with me here. All right, I've had it with this shit. If you are finally getting an icy calm review of Devil May Cry 3, you have the scathing accuracy guys to thank for it. With their DMC3 this and that spiel and every other 3D action game review, as if the thing were some kind of paragon example of the genre, instead of an instantly forgettable semi-hack job that's not even worth mentioning. Wow, like, word for word. Like, did I write this review? That's something that I would say. Wow. I mean, seriously, if not for the absurd amount of hype that surrounds the game, I have been perfectly content dispatching it with a one-paragraph mini review. That's how insignificant and utterly forgettable it is. So gather round once more, you pack of brain-dead, autistic hypocrites, and pay attention to how a real human, an aesthetically sensitive, fully grown, and fully developed human and video game lover thinks about and evaluates games. I went through DMC3 in my tiny Tokyo apartment while I was still living in Japan over the span of a couple of nights circa 2005-2006. The exact dates escape me. Roughly halfway through the game, or perhaps 3/4 of the game or something like that, like I said, it's been 6 or 7 years, where it takes you into a hub type area and throws all of the previous bosses at you one after another, I nearly threw the controller in disgust and gave up on the game. After a short break, to recharge my bullshit toleration meter, I picked up the controller again, and with a shrug signifying something along the lines of what the hell, at least I am playing a Devil May Cry game, went on to finish it and put it out of my mind forever, with short relapses of roof hitting whenever I'd see someone praise it on some review, blog post, or message board, until now. Fun factoid time. Did you know that DMC3's director is the same dude who directed DMC2? The same dude whom Itagaki was making fun of in one of those hilarious interviews he gives from time to time? The same dude who also directed DMC4? Like, this is worth mentioning here. Like, DMC4 and DMC2, both games that are extremely disliked for very good reasons, and yet like I said, this article just goes more into that. Let's not get carried away here. Let's actually finish the article before I start talking about. Fun factoid time. Let's see. Essentially, the same dude we have to thank for the fact that Capcom lost the mantle of the 3D action genre to Tecmo and never took it back, to finally give up on the series to such an extent that they ended up throwing it to a bunch of clueless English losers. Ninja Theory BTFO. They took the game away from Kamiya to give it to this Utsuno hack. Then they took it from Itsuno to give it to the English jobs, and I am fully expecting them to take it from the English jobs one of these days and give it to Derek Yu or Jason Rohrer. Who even are those? But anyway, let's set aside from the mudslinging for now and focus on ripping this game a new one. What's wrong with DMC3 is basically everything except the battle system, 90% of which was anyway inherited from Kamiya. This is a really, really good point, and something that I don't hear enough people talk about when it comes to DMC3 is that, like, the structure of the areas themselves are not fun to traverse. It's not interesting. It's not a well-structured or paced game. It's just again, I should probably just read the article. With the main offenders being stage design, pacing, and setting. Holy shit. This guy really is on the same wavelength as me. As I am. Holy shit. This guy is probably a console warrior in the making. Art design, and to a lesser extent graphics, and ultimately even enemy and boss design, and even the difficulty level to an extent. The stage and environment design is atrocious. Gone are the original's crumbling, overgrown courtyards, colorful hallways, sun-pierced rooms, and sharply distinct in- and outdoor areas. All unique and splendidly designed, each with a carefully studied camera angles to match. The entirety of DMC3 feels as if it's taking place inside a series of drab, colorless, copy-paste rooms. I've only really played DMC once, yet still remember almost every area of the game. Whereas 3's entire length has left inside my mind a similar impression to that of some crappy dungeon crawler a la Eye of the Beholder, which doesn't even have anything we designate by the term stage progression. And here's where autism rears its ugly, stupid head once more, as the Aspies try to defend this utterly unacceptable state of things by arguing that who cares about the graphics? It's the gameplay that matters. Oh, Arlie. In that case, you wouldn't mind if the entire game did. In fact, taking place inside a single bare room with infinite waves of enemies being thrown at you so you can play the game's gameplay forever to your heart content. A kind of Asteroids or Robotron May-type game. But that's how people within the autism spectrum think, not reasonably sensitive, well-developed humans. And it is time we agree that stage design is a far more important aspect of a game, even an action game, and indeed, especially those, than the battle system. Since the main reason we play video games is to be immersed inside wildly imaginative and strikingly beautiful environments, not to get good at pressing plastic buttons according to the dictates of obscure algorithms. The button pushing is merely a means of making us more invested in, and thus drawing us deeper into, the game's environment. And when the environment's crap, and the button pushing is being elevated to the aspect of primary importance, one can safely infer autism and follow one's nose. One will seldom go wrong. Moving on, then, enemy and boss designs, and even boss patterns, are equally unimaginative, and there's absolutely nothing in the entire game like that shape-shifting Shadow Cat mini-boss, or the Spider Boss, or the Black Knight confrontation from DMC1. 3's most memorable and well-designed boss is the very first one you encounter, a multi-headed Hydra-like thing. Is that thing that flies around that room? Yeah, I do remember that boss. And he can barely hold a candle to even the lamest of the bosses from the original. I mean, seriously. Boss patterns are also pretty lame. The only boss that stumped me at all, again, was the first one, whom I retried perhaps a dozen or so times, but all the rest could be defeated, either too quickly or even remember how, which segs into the difficulty issue, or else with some simplistic pattern repeated ad nauseum, as for example with that flying worm dragon thing. It's interesting that this guy played the Japanese version, because, DMC3... The entire reason why people treat this series like, oh, it's so hard, it's because DMC launched over here with no normal mode. You just started on hard mode. So people thought it was a lot harder than it actually was. Okay. As for example, with that flying worm dragon thingy, easily the worst boss battle in the game, and one that I felt as if it had dragged on endlessly for hours. The enemies, on the other hand, are your standard assortment of DMC-type marionettes, none of which have left any impression on me after all these years. At least in the original, I can remember some Hellhound-type monsters attacking me at some point, for variety's sake, but here I got no such impressions. Yeah, the enemy variety is shit. What's worse is that fights against them seem to drag on forever, way beyond the worst such case in DMC1, as the game likes to simply lock you in a room over and over again, while it respawns the same one or two drab-type enemies until you die. Not from the actual challenge that they pose, but from the boredom-induced coma that you are sure to fall into while mashing the one or two combos needed to defeat them. Yeah, the combat in DMC3 is extremely simplistic. It's like, at first, I tried to vary my moves and mix them up a bit, because that's how you enjoy DMC's fights, but since the mixing up is not necessary to defeat the enemies, and the game generally neither allows you to run past them, nor makes an effort to create flowing, running battles across several areas, it's hard to stay motivated enough to remain creative. New moves are generally fairly cheap to buy, so you don't need too many orbs, and the game is by no means hard enough to require you to buy and use the most expensive ones, so there's basically no incentive to try and maximize your orb count for anyone but the most autistic player, for whom an S rank on a screen that's essentially situated outside the game has any meaning. DMC3, then, is by no means the toughest nails game that the hype has made it out to be, and you can take my word for it, the original even slightly harder, and Ninja Gaiden a little harder still than both of them, all at normal difficulty, of course. Yeah, I do agree with that, yep. I think what's earned DMC3 its reputation is the unusual difficulty spike right at the beginning, during the first boss fight and the barroom fight right before, but once past those two areas, there's nothing that would stop anyone who cleared the first game. And as for the battle mechanics themselves, aside from a couple of interesting new moves, which were obligatory for this game to be called a sequel, I don't see what the fuss is all about. The separation of Dante's development into 4 different styles, which is the main innovation here, was a redundant idea, since customization in DMC is supposed to happen by choosing which moves to buy and mixing them accordingly. On top of the fact that Ninja Gaiden had been released a year prior and had moved the genre forward, so any innovation in DMC that didn't take this into account was more or less guaranteed to be minor, which they were, and from what I've heard of the 4th game, still are. I do hear that if you specialize in one of the styles I didn't pick, and no, I don't remember which one I picked, it's been 6 fucking years, you end up capable of running on walls or something, which is a great idea, but which, if true, not only had already been done in Ninja Gaiden, and probably better, but which would certainly be wasted in a game with such crappy environment design as this one. That's another thing I don't think he mentioned. Ninja Gaiden's environments are so much better. I was amazed with like all the shit you could do with like the environments in Ninja Gaiden, like just navigating the areas. I love Ninja Gaiden Black. I need to play it again. At any rate, I'm not going to replay the endless copy-paste fights in your crappy game 3 more times in order to see what the other 3 styles do. I don't do this even in branching path games in which the reward is far greater. Why would I do it in an action game? But the combat system really begins to shine if you replay the fucking game 16 times and try to Well, too bad. I am never going to see that because I am not enough of an autist to do anything as utterly ridiculous as that. Especially when I already have a continually growing backlog of a couple of 10 cubic meters square space worth of far more interesting looking games to play. Let's see. Everything, absolutely everything, is done worse here than in DMC 1. Well, except maybe for the lack of a Pilot Wings Lex File stage, which was indeed a good thing. And what little was truly bad in that game is done utterly exceedingly here. The original's number 1 worst thing was the recycling of some boss fights, but at least the boss fights in that game were far better, and the recycling did not come one after the other, as is the case here. Not only that, but the level in which the recycled boss fights takes place, the aforementioned hub-type area, is utterly drab and unacceptable. Copy-paste hack job game design at its worst. The music also seems a little worse, but this might be a result of the aforementioned bad pacing, as you seem to end up hearing the battle tune far more than in the original, which in conjunction with the drab environments will at times probably make you feel almost disgusted with the setting. It is at this point that Lady, Dante's romantic interest in the game, and a slightly compelling plot development come to the rescue. And at the end of the day, like I said before, you are playing a Devil May Cry game, and Ninja Gaiden aside, there was simply no better 3D action system in existence around this game's release, circa 2005. And from what I have seen or played since, there barely exists any today either. Well, gaming has gotten worse. That's really not saying a lot. When I say there are games better than Devil May Cry, I mean like older games and Bayonetta, and like there are games better than this. This was written before the Wonderful 101 came out, so yeah, that's how old this article is. So if you can stomach the complete lifelessness and lack of imagination evident in every aspect of the game, barring the character design of the protagonist, I do actually agree with that. Dante and Virgil are really well designed. You could do a lot worse and spend a couple of evenings with this game, which is why the 3-star rating. But to praise the game for anything above that is beyond lame, and marks you out, if you are sincere, as an autistic ass-bee. And if you are not, and merely re-bleeding the same hype that everyone else is bleeding, a hypocrite who deserves to be rounded up along with all of his kind and gas out of this planet to extinction. Man, this guy is hardcore. So let me hear nothing more of DMC3 again, and let this review be cited every time some brain-dead loser attempts to play the judge on matters in which he shouldn't even be allowed to speak. There are far better action games out there, and have been for some time, and I personally would rather replay something like Otogi, or the relatively lackluster Ninja Gaiden 2, or even properly sit down and finish DMC2. Which, even better, try out any number of cool-looking action games on which I've missed out over the years. Than so much as contemplate the idea of replaying such a bland and unimaginative by-the-numbers sequel as this. Now, I don't agree with all of this, obviously. Like, of course, I'm a much more, like, Nintendo hardcore. I would have brought up God Hand, like, Wonderful 101, like, hyped up Ninja Gaiden Black a lot more. Talked about some specific things, but overall, like, the general idea of it, like, Devil May Cry 3 being overrated, I completely stand behind, and I completely support. I endorse this article. There is no reason for Devil May Cry 3 to have as much hype as it does. It really does not deserve the attention or the praise it gets. It is extremely underwhelming, it's boring, it's really not worth playing at all. The only reason I'm really even bringing this up and talking about it is, because of the fanboys. It's really the only reason the series has maintained relevance. It's just the fanboys are just super super hardcore. It's unbelievable. It's surreal. It's a wow. Oof. Devil May Cry is just disgusting. So yeah, I am not a fan of Devil May Cry, as I'm sure you're all well aware of by now. But there is a company that I am a fan of, PlatinumGames, that is preparing for a brand new announcement. Several brand new announcements already out. The first one was very disappointing. It was just a port, but it seems going by I